This is Guadalajara, Mexico. And like all big cities, what lies beneath its streets is a labyrinth of pipes, cables, and tunnels. Normally out of sight and out of mind. Until the unthinkable happens. 206 citizens lose their lives. Now, using cutting-edge computer technology, we reveal exactly what went wrong. Disasters don't just happen. They're triggered by a chain of critical events. Unravel the fateful decisions in those final seconds from disaster. Mexico, Guadalajara, April 21st, 1992, 1:30 in the morning. It's the hottest time of the year in Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city. In the working-class neighborhood of Reforma, in the southeast of the city, a foul smell has been hanging in the air for 2 days. The Gomez family and their 4 children live on one of Reforma's busiest streets, Gante. And even though it's nighttime, they can't sleep. But it's not the heat that's keeping them awake.
Yo ingresé al baño.
I went into the bathroom.
Y era tanto el olor.
The smell was so strong.
No se podía estar dentro del baño.
All the neighbors were complaining that the sewers, the bathrooms, and the drains smelled.
Las alcantarillas, los sumideros, olían a gasolina.
7 o'clock that morning. 20 blocks away from the Gomez family, Socorro Rios begins working in her tortilla shop. Her neighbors think that the smell may be a gas leak coming from her kitchens. As a precaution, she calls the gas company. 2 engineers check out the problem and find nothing wrong. But the neighbors continue to complain, so she calls the gas company a second time.
They came again and this time changed the regulator. Now supposedly everything was all right, but there was still a dreadful smell. I didn't know what to do, so I just ignored it.
10 a.m. Now it's not just the smell. People report seeing gas plumes coming out of manhole covers. Something is definitely wrong underground. But smells from the city's sewers aren't uncommon. Guadalajara is a boomtown. In a race to develop industry and create jobs, companies often ignored environmental regulations. They frequently dumped illegal waste into the sewage system. 1 p.m. The smell is getting worse. Jorge Santoyo works for the water company, CIAPA. He's in charge of security and public health.
We were examining the sewage pipes to try to discover the source of the contamination.
But the inspection doesn't get to the cause. Meanwhile, the fire brigade reassures people that there is nothing to worry about. It's now been 3 days since people first noticed the smell. And despite the authorities' assurances, the problems are getting worse. Residents now discover gasoline in their fresh water supply. Maria de Jesus Gonzalez lives at 547 Gante Street.
Yo fui hacia la pila.
I went to the sink and got very scared because I turned on the tap and it smelled like gas.
2 p.m. The gas plumes coming from the manhole covers reach over 6 feet high. The water authority becomes increasingly concerned. When they test the gases in the sewer, the results reveal that an explosion is imminent. According to witnesses, one water authority employee advises residents to leave their homes. He warns them that the sewers beneath Gante Street are a time bomb waiting to explode. But the official line from city authorities is still, stay put and keep calm. Some local inhabitants are so worried, they venture into the rat-infested sewers to see for themselves. One of them is Sergio Gomez, an engineering student who works part-time in the family plumbing business.
We were restless due to the stench of gasoline coming not only from the manhole covers, but from the toilets. Samples were taken by some neighbors and some authorities. When we examined them against the light, the vapors looked and smelled like gasoline.
Midnight, and the smell is even stronger. The water authority is now very worried. Engineers still can't uncover the source of the smell. Fearful of the imminent explosion, they pump large amounts of water into the sewer to dilute the gasoline. 9:40 a.m. on April 22nd. It's been nearly 4 days since the troubles in Reforma began. By now, there are so many complaints that the city's fire chief, Trinidad Lopez Rivas, gives a radio interview to calm people down. He insists that the situation is under control and that there is no risk of an explosion. His reassuring words are broadcast on the morning news. But the reality is very different. The people of Guadalajara know that something is still wrong. They can see it, smell it, and taste it. Seconds from disaster will continue in a moment. We now continue with Seconds from Disaster. Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city. There's a dangerous buildup of explosive gas in the main sewer. For 4 days, people complain of the smell. They even report that gasoline is coming out of their bathroom taps. But despite their pleas, the city's fire chief, Lopez Rivas, insists there is nothing to worry about. Engineers from the Water Authority are trying desperately to locate the source of contamination. Their meter reading shows that the situation is critical. But even with this knowledge, Jorge Santoyo, who is in charge of security and public health, is powerless to order people to leave the area.
The decision to evacuate was not ours to make. That should have been made by the firemen or the Civil Protection Agency, because they have the expertise to determine whether a situation is high risk or not.
But no one is willing to give the order to evacuate. With nowhere else to turn, residents call a local radio station. Reporter Luis Fernando Loza rushes to the scene, shocked that no one is being told the truth.
Claro que pudo haberse evitado.
No one warned them. No municipal authority, no state authority took the responsibility of saying, we must get out of here. Nobody dared order an evacuation of this scale. This hadn't been done in the past, and there was a lack of knowledge about how to carry this out.
It's 10 o'clock on the morning of April 22nd, 1992. Lilia Ruiz heads out to run some errands.
Alrededor de las 10 de la mañana, yo decidí.
At around 10 a.m., I decided I would go to the local market, close to Gante Street. I got on the Route 333 bus.
333.
10:05 a.m. Socorro Rios is joined by her sister Alejandra in the tortilla shop.
When my sister arrived, there were a lot of people there waiting for tortillas, so I asked my sister to bring me a bucket of water. But since she had brought my breakfast with her, she said, "I will bring you some juice from across the street." I told her, no, fetch the bucket of water first.
10:05 and 30 seconds. Instead of going onto the street to buy the juice, Alejandra goes in the opposite direction, to the back of the shop. It saved her life. The tortilla shop on Rio Lago Street suffers the full force of the blast.
When I turned around, I saw a really bright light. I mean, extremely bright. And a boom so loud that I was completely blind and deaf.
Her tortilla shop collapses on top of her. She's buried in the rubble. The blast tears underground along the sewer line. 3 blocks away, the 333 bus is picking its way through the congested streets. Lilia Ruiz is one of the passengers on board.
I don't remember any noise, any voices, any screams, anything. I think that I had been instantly hit very hard. So hard that it knocked me unconscious. When I regained consciousness, I was already being saved from the rubble. So I will never know how I got out of the bus.
Where pavement and houses stood only seconds before, there is now a huge crater running along the street, filled with rubble. But this is just the beginning. The explosions roll down the sewer, destroying every street above. Sergio Gomez is at home on Gante Street with his family, preparing to celebrate his 25th birthday.
It was a muffled sound. It came from underground. It shook our house. Many cracks appeared in the walls and the street became dark. I hugged my mother and I dragged her under a doorway. I yelled to my sisters to get under a door frame. The house was shaking. There were many explosions, really strong, things falling down, windows breaking.
10:06 a.m. The first emergency calls start pouring into the Red Cross control room. One reports a crash. A bus has fallen into a ditch. The explosions continue. There's one at 10:10, one at 11:30. Nowhere is safe. People have no idea where to run or where the next explosion will be. Maria de Jesus Gonzalez's home on Gante Street is destroyed in an instant, trapping her in the debris.
I felt the ground sinking from under me. And when I fell, a dead man fell sideways on top of me. And with his chin, he fractured my neck.
The Red Cross is inundated with calls. A house has completely disappeared. Manhole covers are flying off. Injured people need help fast. People are dying. Socorro Rios still lies buried in the rubble of the tortilla shop, not knowing if anyone will find her.
I felt helpless because when I was in the middle of the rubble, I couldn't even breathe. I started to pray to God. I heard a voice that told me, "Don't worry about yourself. I'll always be there with you." And that is when I lost consciousness.
With so many roads blown up or blocked, emergency services struggle to reach her and others injured by the blasts. They finally make it to the tortilla shop and begin to dig Socorro out of the rubble.
I came to when they were taking me out. A taxi arrived and they took me and my sister to the medical center.
It is now 10:20 a.m., 14 minutes after the first explosion, and more blasts rip through the city. Many of the explosions are bearing down on Gante Street. Maria de Jesus Gonzalez is still trapped. She has a broken neck and can't move. But she can see what's going on around her.
A small girl fell next to me, and then a paving slab smashed the right side of her chest. In that moment, she bled to death.
The district of Reforma is like a war zone. For survivors like Sergio Gomez, the scene is beyond belief.
There were no houses. There was debris everywhere.
Over an hour has passed since the first explosion, and still the blasts continue. At 11:30, two simultaneous explosions destroy Rio Bravo Street and Rio Nilo Street. The scale of destruction is immense. There are already 100 dead. Many people are severely injured. The explosions subside for a while, so rescue workers can finally get in. They search for survivors and rush the injured to the hospital, but the respite is short-lived. 2:20 p.m. A final blast rocks González Gallo, one of the main streets in Reforma. Satellite photos taken minutes afterwards reveal the scale of the catastrophe. The explosions have lasted for 4 hours and 14 minutes. The devastation runs for 5 miles along Gante Street, Rio Bravo, Rio Nilo, and all the way down to González Gallo. If this were New York City, it would be like an explosion had ripped out Broadway from Wall Street to Times Square. Jose Hernandez Clare is a news photographer who borrows a motorcycle and finds a way through the devastated streets to capture these amazing images.
It seemed like a war zone. It had a great impact on me to arrive and see the level of destruction. It took me a few minutes to be able to react and go into action and take pictures. I saw this truck on top of the remains of a house. That really showed me the intensity of the blast. It showed me how a huge blast made a truck weighing tons land right up there. I could see the people standing still as if under a spell.
como hechizados.
5:11 p.m. The Red Cross reports now say that as many as 170 people are confirmed dead and at least 500 are known to be injured. With so many wounded, the hospitals are filling up. Sporting arenas are turned into makeshift emergency shelters. And the Red Cross issues a plea for medical supplies, blood, and plasma. One sports stadium is turned into a giant morgue. They line up 146 bodies. Survivors arrive, dreading that they'll find a missing loved one. They're warned by a sign at the entry that tells them, what you are about to see will be very painful, but we are here to help you in any way we can. Hundreds of people are still missing. Many rescuers dig with their bare hands, desperate to find anyone alive. Trying to help, some people bring in bulldozers to remove the wreckage, but it's too soon. Survivors are still buried in the rubble. In a daring act of bravery, Sergio Gomez and his friends lie down in front of the bulldozers to stop them.
It didn't take long for the heavy machinery to arrive. They started to run bulldozers. They accelerated and moved, but we wouldn't move. Finally, instructions were sent. The authorities arrived, and then they stopped the machinery.
At 10 that evening, the President of Mexico, Carlos Salinas, arrives in the disaster area. It takes him until dawn to walk through the devastated streets. He is stunned by the enormity of what he sees. Over 15,000 people are homeless, 1,440 injured, and 206 dead. The president immediately orders the Attorney General's office to investigate and to report back within 72 hours. He wants to know the reason for the explosions. Now, by rewinding the events of that fateful day and by going deep into the investigation, we can reveal what really happened. State-of-the-art computer graphics will go where no camera can, into the heart of the disaster zone. Guadalajara sits in a major earthquake zone. At the moment of the first explosion, scientists watching seismic monitors see them hit 3.3 on the Richter scale. This is the equivalent of over 13 tons of TNT exploding at once. Could an earthquake with an epicenter over the district of Reforma have caused the tragedy? The devastated area looks like the aftermath of an earthquake, but the investigation team studies the damage. They quickly realize that it runs in a continuous line following the path of the streets. An earthquake wouldn't do this, so the team quickly dismisses the theory. Instead, they turn their attention to the underground tunnels that lie beneath Reforma, where they make an extraordinary discovery. We'll continue with more Seconds from Disaster in a moment. And now, back to Seconds from Disaster. Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city, has been ripped apart by a series of catastrophic explosions. There's something in the water. Now using advanced computer graphics, we go into the heart of the disaster zone to reveal exactly what went wrong. The question now facing the investigators is what could have caused a series of explosions with the destructive power of an earthquake. The line of destruction follows the main underground sewer. In the 3 days leading up to the blasts, many of the residents complained about the smell of gasoline. There must be gasoline in the sewers. But where did it come from? Reforma is an industrial area with over 40 factories and chemical plants nearby. The biggest is a refinery run by the state-owned oil company, Pemex. It becomes the focus for investigators who run straight into a mystery. At the time of the original complaints, Pemex management ran their own tests. Pemex officials say these tests reveal that all their plant and equipment is in perfect order, and they are not to blame. But they also say their investigations reveal the presence of another dangerous chemical in the sewer.
Pemex engineers came to the site. They commented, because of the characteristics of the explosions and the type of vapors that were found in the inspection holes, that this could be caused by a gas called hexane, used in the cooking oil industry.
Hexane has many of the properties of gasoline, including a similar smell. Most importantly, it's an extremely flammable liquid that gives off a highly explosive vapor, and it has a very low flash point, -7 degrees Fahrenheit. Hexane is used to extract oil from seeds and vegetables to make cooking oil. Scott Steedman is a civil engineer who specializes in disasters.
Hexane is a strong irritant, which means it causes lightheadedness, and its fumes are very toxic. It's also extremely flammable, and it's perhaps one of the last things you'd want in a sewer system.
Pemex officials then release a statement saying that a local cooking oil factory is responsible for releasing hexane gas underground. But the company, La Central, denies responsibility, saying they use very small quantities of hexane in their production process. Not enough to cause the size of explosions that hit Reforma. Their claim is backed up by the investigation team, who examines water samples taken the day before the explosions. They find no evidence of hexane. It couldn't have caused the blast. Pemex's claim is inaccurate. The people of Reforma are still convinced that gasoline is to blame. They know this is not the first explosion in the area, and that there have been similar explosions in this very area in recent years. One was in 1983, the other in 1991, only a year before the disaster of April 22nd. Both were powerful enough to blow off manhole covers, and both were found to be caused by gasoline. Raquel Gutierrez is a lawyer who represents some of the families affected by the disaster.
The first incident took place in 1983 near Independencia. There were explosions due to the combination of diesel hydrocarbon. It's practically the same area where the explosions occurred in 1992.
But if gasoline was to blame, where was it coming from? Surprisingly, Guadalajara sits on top of a major gas distribution pipeline. A pressurized steel pipeline built in 1973 and just under 12 inches in diameter carries gasoline from the Pemex refinery in Guadalajara to Salamanca, almost 150 miles away. The investigation team inspects the pipeline. Then there's a breakthrough. They discover that gasoline is flooding pavement close to the Pemex refinery, and that the leak is coming from underground. But the pressurized pipeline is made of steel. How could it fail? Guadalajara's underground network of pipes grew to service the booming economy. The result, a haphazard maze of overlapping pipes and cables that carry water and fuel. When investigators dig beneath the flooded pavement, they discover that a water pipe has been bent around the pressurized steel pipeline. At the point where they touch, there is a small hole where gasoline is leaking out.
Different metals have different chemical compositions, and when they touch each other, certain metals, when touching other metals, can cause a chemical reaction to occur, and that can lead to corrosion of one or both of the metals.
But how can the water pipe pierce the much tougher steel-reinforced gasoline pipeline? The water pipeline is made of iron coated in zinc. The gasoline pipe is steel. Together in wet ground, these metals destroy one another. Even though the hole is less than an inch wide, the pressure forces the gasoline to gush into the soil. It is estimated that over 150,000 gallons of highly explosive gasoline leaked into the soil, a huge amount of fuel. The leak in the gasoline pipeline is only feet away from one of Reforma's sewage tunnels. The fuel quickly spreads to surrounding soil and envelops the tunnel, seeping in through the cracks and entering the sewage system. But as if a contaminated sewer weren't bad enough, the leak seeps into the surrounding water pipes and enters Reforma's drinking water supply. Investigators now know how gasoline gets into the sewer and water supply, but they are still puzzled as to why there are so many explosions over a 4-hour period. Seconds from Disaster will return after this. You're watching Seconds from Disaster. A series of massive explosions devastates the Mexican city of Guadalajara. Investigators now know that a broken gasoline pipe is to blame. But why was there a series of explosions over the space of several hours instead of one massive blast? They discover that Guadalajara has been extending its light railway system by adding a new underground line. But engineers digging the new subway have hit a problem. The city's main sewer lies right in their path.
Construction of a new metro line meant they had to divert the main sewer down and then up again, forming a U-bend under the metro line.
Investigators then figure out that the pattern of explosions spreads south from where the sewer is diverted around the subway tunnel. It's a strong lead, and the design of the diverted sewage tunnel now becomes the focus of the investigation. Sewers are traditionally built with a slope so that gravity carries the waste downhill. But the building of the new metro has forced the new section of sewage tunnel to pump its contents uphill. The pumps are only designed to drive liquid sewage, so the dangerous gasoline fumes build up and remain.
Now this had very serious consequences because although fluid could pass down through the U-bend and out the sewer, fumes would be trapped upstream of the metro line.
Upstream of the metro line is Gante Street, where the blocked gas backs up to and fills the sewer network in between. 3 days before the explosions, the residents of Reforma complain of the smell coming from the sewer.
The smell was so strong. It was a really horrible stench of gasoline.
36 hours before the explosions, the gasoline vapor begins to concentrate. Some of it escapes through manhole covers and drains. The rest builds up in various parts of the sewer, forming highly explosive pockets of gas. These pockets exist all along the main sewer that runs under Reforma and in some of the small feeder pipes.
As the gas fumes would back up in the main sewer, so the concentration of the gas would be higher in some places and lower in other places. So you might have branch sewers that were filled with fumes, or the main sewer itself. But with the different concentrations, the higher concentrations would explode first.
24 hours before the blasts, the smell spreads to the sewer outside the tortilla shop where Socorro works.
The 4 days before, it smelled a lot like gas. The customers that came in were asking me if there was a gas leak. They said, "It smells a lot. What's happening?"
26 minutes before the first blast, the fire chief goes on the radio and insists there is no risk of an explosion. But he's wrong. The consequences of the leaked fuel in the sewage pipe and the buildup of gas are inevitable. It's now just a matter of time. 10:06 a.m. The first explosion occurs almost half a mile from where the sewer is diverted around the new subway line. It destroys 20th of November Street and the top of Gante Street. 10:10. A second explosion destroys much of Violeta Street. Two blasts at 11:30 devastate Rio Bravo and Rio Nilo. Then at 2:20 p.m., the sewer that crosses under Gonzales Gallo explodes. The chain of critical events is complete, but there is one big question that remains. The gasoline had been leaking for months. So why did the disaster strike on April 22nd? To answer the question, investigators have to go back to the days leading up to the blasts. The answer comes from an unlikely source. On the night of April 18th, residents found it difficult to sleep, but not just because of the terrible smell coming from the sewers. The temperature in Guadalajara hits nearly 90 degrees. The high temperatures continue into the early hours of April 22nd. As the heat permeates down into the drains, it makes the gasoline fumes rise in greater volume to the streets above. And they are now at flashpoint. All it needs is a spark. Ironically, attempts by the Water Authority to investigate the smell may have triggered the blasts. On that day, crews are at work across the city, lifting manhole covers to release fumes from the sewer. Metal struck by metal can cause a spark. Perhaps a workman jamming a crowbar into a manhole cover, or dropping a cover back into a hole created that fatal spark. But the authorities' tests revealed there was also a high risk of explosion in the days leading up to the disaster. So why didn't they order an evacuation of Reforma and save hundreds of lives? Stay tuned for more Seconds from Disaster. And now the conclusion of Seconds from Disaster. A catastrophic sewer explosion has devastated Guadalajara, Mexico, a city of over 3 million. The official death toll is 206 people, but could those deaths have been avoided? Tests by the Water Authority on the days leading up to the disaster revealed that an explosion was imminent. So why didn't the authorities order the area to be evacuated? The Attorney General's investigation results in 9 arrests following the explosions. The city's mayor, Enrique Dao Flores, 4 Pemex officials, 3 Water Authority employees, and a government official. They spend 8 months in custody, but their case never comes to trial. All were released without charge, and the inquiry into the tragedy closed without anyone being found guilty for the disaster.
It's shameful to see how an event of this nature, that shouldn't have surprised the authorities, took them by surprise. They never thought they'd have a disaster of the magnitude of April 22nd.
A mass evacuation could have saved the people of Guadalajara, but the police, the fire brigade, and everyone else in charge was unprepared to make the decision. Local residents even dispute the official death count of 206. No one is certain. The official report doesn't detail the number of injured or the property destroyed. Only Lloyd's of London, who underwrote the loss, knows. They estimate that 252 people died, 1,440 were injured, and more than 15,000 were left homeless. 1,124 houses and 450 businesses were damaged. The insurance company, Lloyd's, estimates the cost at somewhere between $300 million and $1 billion. But the human price of the tragedy is incalculable. Socorro Rios fractured her skull and spine in the explosion. Now she cannot endure the pain of physical work and is only supported by her family.
I can't work. It's not the same. I can't lift heavy things and have to rest a lot because of the constant pain. I always have to have my pills with me just to get through the day.
Maria de Jesus Gonzalez broke her neck in the explosion. She wears a brace to support her head. But after 5 years, it's worn out, and she can't afford to replace it.
I have always been told that my life is hanging by a thread because my neck is glued, and the brace is what holds my head. You might have noticed that my head leans sideways. It hurts so much.
Lilia Ruiz lost her left leg. Once a year, she and most of the other survivors return to the scene of devastation to honor those who lost their lives at a mass dedicated to the victims. The owner of this former house on Gante Street lost 5 members of his family. He has made a vow that he'll never rebuild it. The site will stand as it is, a permanent memorial to the victims. The loss of so many lives is due to a critical chain of events that come together that day. A badly engineered water pipe placed too close to a gasoline supply line caused a reaction called metal-to-metal corrosion. Both pipes leaked and gasoline flooded the soil. The leaking gasoline touched and then enveloped the city's main sewer. The gasoline entered the pipe and flooded the sewer.
The sewers, the bathroom, the drains, it smelled like gasoline.
The gasoline fumes built up, but they were blocked by an uphill section of the sewer, redesigned to accommodate a new subway. The fumes had nowhere to go but through manholes and household drains.
All the smells that day cause headaches and nausea. It caused vomiting because it was such a strong smell.
The high temperatures created a hothouse for volatile gases. A spark ignited, and the trapped fumes triggered the first blast.
It was a muffled sound and it came from underground. It shook our house, and many cracks appeared in the walls, and the street became dark.
Then, a series of explosions ripped through the sewer system, devastating nearly 5 miles of the city's streets. And after the tragedy, the Pemex oil refinery shut down, and Pemex rerouted the high-pressure gasoline pipe away from the city. Now, the old city of Guadalajara has a new sewer with a state-of-the-art monitoring system. It constantly measures the gases and toxins in the sewer to prevent such a tragic accident from ever happening again.
This is the National Geographic Channel.
This is Guadalajara, Mexico. And like all big cities, what lies beneath its streets is a labyrinth of pipes, cables, and tunnels. Normally out of sight and out of mind. Until the unthinkable happens. 206 citizens lose their lives. Now, using cutting-edge computer technology, we reveal exactly what went wrong. Disasters don't just happen. They're triggered by a chain of critical events. Unravel the fateful decisions in those final seconds from disaster. Mexico, Guadalajara, April 21st, 1992, 1:30 in the morning. It's the hottest time of the year in Guadalajara, Mexico's second largest city. In the working-class neighborhood of Reforma, in the southeast of the city, a foul smell has been hanging in the air for 2 days. The Gomez family and their 4 children live on one of Reforma's busiest streets, Gante. And even though it's nighttime, they can't sleep. But it's not the heat that's keeping them awake.
Yo ingresé al baño. I went into the bathroom.
Y era tanto el olor.
The smell was so strong.
No se podía estar dentro del baño.
All the neighbors were complaining that the sewers, the bathrooms, and the drains smelled.
Las alcantarillas, los sumideros, olían a gasolina.
7 o'clock that morning, 20 blocks away from the Gomez family, Socorro Rios begins working in her tortilla shop. Her neighbors think that the smell may be a gas leak coming from her kitchens. As a precaution, she calls the gas company. 2 engineers check out the problem and find nothing wrong, but the neighbors continue to complain, so she calls the gas company a second time.
They came again and this time changed the regulator. Now supposedly everything was all right, but there was still a dreadful smell. I didn't know what to do, so I just ignored it.
10 a.m. Now it's not just the smell. People report seeing gas plumes coming out of manhole covers. Something is definitely wrong underground. But smells from the city's sewers aren't uncommon. Guadalajara is a boomtown. In a race to develop industry and create jobs, companies often ignored environmental regulations. They frequently dumped illegal waste into the sewage system. "1 p.m. The smell is getting worse. Jorge Santoya works for the water company, CIAPA. He's in charge of security and public health.
We were examining the sewage pipes to try to discover the source of the contamination.
But the inspection doesn't get to the cause. Meanwhile, the fire brigade reassures people that there is nothing to worry about. It's now been 3 days since people first noticed the smell. And despite the authorities' assurances, the problems are getting worse. Residents now discover gasoline in their fresh water supply. Maria de Jesus Gonzalez lives at 547 Gante Street.
Yo fui hacia la pila